which sits on the root of Hadrian's Wall. Over the road from St Dominic's Church, there used to be a Roman mile castle, and we know the Romans put mile castles where there was fresh water sources, so a Roman spring, if you will. So they disturb an ancient Roman spring, which you can probably now guess is what's flowing down there by your feet. That's where that water's coming from. It's a Roman spring. We might bottle it in years to come and sell it and make our millions. Send we're volunteers, so who knows, we might find the money making out of that. But not only are they doing the modern infrastructure, the modern utilities and an old spring. One day, I want you to imagine two of the lads having their dinner, their break, when one of them goes, "Yeah, mate, those houses over there look all right, are you?" And his mate looks and he goes, "Funny you should mention that, it does look like they're leaning a little bit." They've gone through the foundations of the housing above. So this project at £9,000 now goes over budget to the tune of £37,000, about £500,000 in modern day money. And any entrances that weren't complete when this happens get abandoned. They just basically say, "Look, they've completely bodged the job up there, we've got no money left, break up and abandon." So this is where we are. We're in an abandoned entrance. This was going to be one of the big 16 entrances, but it was never used. But what's more important is directly above there is those houses, Tarset Street. So there was going to be an entrance on Tarset Street. So we think it's reinforced for two reasons. We think it was going to be an entrance, but also we think there was an event happens in 1941 that means structurally the tunnel needed reinforced as well. Newcastle, for want of a better word, was relatively lucky when it comes to civilian loss of life in World War II. We lose 171 civilians, which is 171 people, loved ones' lives cruelly snuffed out. But when you collectively put together the whole of the UK, you're talking 70,000 civilian lives, of course. We're bombing in Germany, and Germany lose 2 million civilians. North Tyneside lose more, Sunderland lose more. And really what saves Newcastle is its geography. So the reason Sunderland got hit more was because A, they had the biggest shipyards at the time in the world, I believe. And also Sunderland lies really close to the mouth of its river, whereas we're 8-9 miles upstream. So most of our infrastructure for building munitions and things like that was down by the mouth of our river. And the city of Newcastle is further up, whereas Sunderland is a lot closer to where all that's going on. Hartlepool, Middlesbrough, all the same kind of principle. What the Luftwaffe used to use Newcastle for is a different reason. They used to line up with that chimney I told you about outside the Cluny. They used to know that chimney was there. It's now half the height for this reason. They used to line up, and then if they fly in a straight line pretty much, they'd hit a certain spot on the west coast of the UK. They would then turn left, and you're now finding the likes of Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Coventry. You can turn right, and you can find Glasgow, the Clyde, or you can fly straight on, and you can hit the Holland and Wolf shipyards in Belfast. So what they were using Newcastle for was to find those other towns and cities, those other places. So they were having what we call lightning raids in this tunnel. In this area, you could be down here for upwards of 12 hours because you were waiting for the Luftwaffe to fly over, find the town or city they needed to find, and then turn around and fly back the way they've come. And they would sometimes drop bombs on targets that hadn't been already hit. Sometimes they jettison them into the North Sea. Even to this day, if you have a storm surge, every so often you'll get old World War II bombs being washed up on the beaches. So don't get me wrong, Newcastle was targeted, it just wasn't heavily targeted. However, in early May 1941, there is a bomb drops directly above us. It does something peculiar, it burrows into the ground and then it explodes. And it leaves what's called a camouflet or a bell crater, basically an upside down mushroom shaped hole in the earth. They cover it with tarpaulin, bits of wood, no bells and whistles like you would have now. And in late May 1941, in fact May 31st, 1941, there's a 7-year-old girl called Irene Page who is running some messages for a family who live on Tarset Street. She inadvertently runs across this crudely covered crater. She's not aware it's really under her feet. The ground gives way, she falls in, she shouts out, and then she falls silent. There's a Boy Scout walking past as this starts to happen. He's called Ernie Smith. He's 12 years old. He's very brave. He ties a washing line round his waist, climbs into the crater above to rescue Irene, and then he falls silent. We've now got 2 children stuck in a crater and we don't know what's going on. There's 2 off-duty emergency service workmen walking past, and they're summoned over. There's 2 bends in the crater and we can't, so they just run in to rescue them. And again, we lose contact with them. So eventually the emergency services are called from St Anne's Church. They turn up, strap on some breathing apparatus. One of them puts a wet rag over his mouth, climbs into a crater just a few metres above my head here, and unfortunately, there's the discovery of 4 dead bodies. And what we suspect happened is when that bomb's exploded, it's left a pocket of carbon monoxide gas. They've covered the crater over, so the gas hasn't been able to dissipate, and unfortunately, our 4 people have lost their lives. Now, what makes the story even more tragic is one of those off-duty firemen running in to rescue these kids doesn't realise at the time he's going in to rescue his niece. So our family lose 2 loved ones in that event. Now, Ernie, our Boy Scout, and our 2 off-duty firemen, they get posthumous awards for bravery within their respective organisations. Irene just kind of almost gets forgotten about being a civilian. She's buried in St Anne's Cemetery around the corner. And we're still very closely connected to Irene's family. So we do a concert series down here called Sounds of the Underground. And one of the gentlemen who performs down here is a gentleman called Larry Page, who happens to be Irene's nephew. And we wanted to kind of give Irene a bit more recognition. Wanted her to get recognition up there because she's just a story down here. So a couple of years ago, the Useburn Trust paid for an unofficial blue plaque to go on the corner of a building directly above our heads here, and there's a patch of scrub land just opposite that, which is where this all unfolds. And of course, we mentioned Ernie, John, and George, and everybody else involved in that event. I actually had a cup of tea with Ernie's brother the day we unveiled this. A cup of tea in the Cherry Bakewell. It was about 70 odd years after the war at this point, and it was still very raw. Like kind of people say, time heals. For him, it didn't. Said every Christmas, every New Year, there's a what if, a what if, a what if. So this is just in memory of 4 lives that were lost just a few metres above our heads here. Just so you know, I'm not telling you a macabre story in the dark underground. That will come. There is a press clipping on the wall here from the Newcastle Courant dated June the 2nd, 1941. Picture of Irene Ernie, our 2 off-duty firemen, and a picture of a warden looking into the crater just above here now. On May 31st every year, somebody from the Trust will go along and put a "From me to you, Teddy," or flowers or something on Irene's grave. So we're still very active. And like I said, we're still in touch with some of Irene's family. So we're going to go around this wall in a moment, and you're going to see some more evidence of civilian life. You'll notice there's a thermometer there as we go round. I'll hedge me bets and say it's between 12 and 13 degrees. What we think happens is the boulder clay surrounding the tunnel acts a bit like an insulator, like in a fridge, keeps it at a constant temperature. And again, the gas detection system would tell us that the quality of the air in the tunnel is actually better than the quality of the air outside. We think the boulder clay acts the same way like mineral water filters through rocks, and we think that filters through the pollutants from the air, and we get this lovely air coming down here. So if anyone breaks wind, I'll chin you. Right, let's have a walk around. Only the kids would do it. Is that the lemonade factory? Yeah. 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 Please feel free to grab yourself a seat and watch the legs on the benches because they do stick out a little bit far. Right, if you watch everyone's eyes, but if you then shine your torches that way up the tunnel, disappearing off into the darkness there is the rest of the Victoria Tunnel. If you were to come on a 2-hour tour, we'd make another quarter of a mile up there. You would eventually meet the Victoria Tunnel toilets, which are still in situ. And you'd see the Victoria Tunnel postcode system and lots of other things up there. But what I'm demonstrating now is there's no more blast walls. So if you remember at the start of the tour, I said the blast walls will eventually disappear, and that is the point we're at now. So this is where we've put some replica benches. With the originals are where the skeleton is sitting down there. We did have more original benches down here, but people like to sit on them in the damp's done what it's done over the year, and we don't want anyone to get injured. So we had the BBC down here a few years ago with Dan Snow, and as part of the fee, we said, oh, you want to make replica benches? Lovely, thank you. As part of the fee, leave them. So these are courtesy of Dan Snow and the BBC, but they're made to the same specifications. Very low, and if you're not already sitting back, I invite you to sit back and enjoy it while your kidneys scream for mercy, because they dig right in here. Nothing going on up here. And remember how long you could be down here, upwards of 12 hours. So Not a very comfortable place. Comfort wasn't a priority, safety was. So we've got our benches there, but we've also, if you're lucky, got some bunk beds. Now these are triple layered bunk beds, and there were only about 500 bunk beds in the entirety of the tunnel. So most people would be on benches. To get one of these bunk beds, you had to meet certain criteria, and it's rough wood, and you wouldn't want to really sleep on them because you didn't have a mattress or anything. You had to bring your own bedding down, and there was a criteria. Top bunk, small child. Headroom is only going to really allow for that. Middle bunks and bottom bunks, you've got the VIPs in the tunnel, so we had wardens in the tunnel as well as wardens above, and also our nurses, anybody from the auxiliary services who might be down here for whatever reason, they could have a bed, pregnant ladies and nursing mums as well. But it was said, and I'm going to quote the words of a gentleman called Basil, who I worked with for many years. We lost him about 2 years ago. But he told me that you would walk along here and there would be somebody standing there. And if you were a warden or somebody who was entitled to that bed, you'd be met by somebody from the biker granny mafia. So it was the biker matriarchs who actually ran the tunnel. I love to think of my great-grandma, all 4'1" of us, standing there, and someone walking along and basically saying, you know, that's my bed. No, it's not. And if you want to argue about it, I know your mum, or you lose your teeth, or, you know, because even to this day, you wouldn't argue with someone's grandma from Biker. Salt of the earth, great working class women, but they're fiery. So they held their own. So I love to think of my great grandma doing that. But this is this is where you were for beds and benches and things like that. This is what you had. Now this channel of water looks remarkably appealing after you've had too many cups of tea or coffee down here. And if you were caught urinating or worse than that, you would be fined by one of the tunnel wardens. So there was wardens patrolling down here. And you would be fined £5, which back then was the equivalent of £280. So there were official reasons for being fined. Using that as a toilet, smoking during an air raid, coming in with alcohol. You could come in drunk, but you couldn't bring alcohol in. Bringing your pets down, couldn't bring your pets down. But really what the wardens were doing was looking for any reason to fine you, because the wardens got to keep the fines.
Would they let you smoke if it wasn't an air raid?
If it wasn't an air raid, yeah, it was only because they were worried about gas. But when it wasn't an air raid, yeah, which I can't imagine it being very pleasant down here when that happened. But the wardens would get to keep those fines. So imagine being a warden down here and getting £280 in your back pocket every time. You would just look for any reason to fine people. But there were policing going on down here. Again, there were functions that you got above ground going on down here as well. So this is kind of where I would stop for the World War II experience. The toilets are further up in the tunnel there. They're Elson chemical toilets, and they're still there. But if you'd like to come and see them, you have to come over and do it. And there's a postcode system up there, and there's also a bit of a mystery in the ladies' toilets as well. But again, I'll leave you hanging with that one. So has anyone got any questions, World War II, before I spin around and whistle you back for the construction?
Can I ask you about the longer tour?
Yes.
Because it mentioned the steep gradient.
Yes.
What's that?
That's the entrance on Crow Hole Road.
So what sort of length and gradient is it?
It's an 75-foot climb on a 1 and 4 gradient. Right. So it is steep. And I mean, even if you're on the longer tour today, we wouldn't take you because there's water coming down from it freezes. So because you get closer to the surface. But if you want to see it after the tour, if you go to where the Tanner's Arms pub is, over the road, there's a green telephone junction box and there's a yellow metal manhole cover in front of that with a bollard ahead of it to stop people parking their cars on it, because they used to do that. And that's the exit point. That used to be an entrance into the tunnel. There used to be an entrance there. And we use it as an emergency exit now if need be. So, but yeah, you do get to go up and see that other entrance if the weather's favourable. But yeah, that's the Crow Hole Road entrance, the one that caused all the problems. So. And you'll see that it was meant to be a double entrance, so you can see like a lintel, and you can see they've knocked in to build another ramp coming down, but they never get to do that. Right. So it just kind of disappears into the wall. It's really quite like frozen in time. So. And we've got some very poignant fingerprints in the bricks further up as well, which are World War II era, but they're children's fingerprints from when they were helping to make bricks to do a repair on the tunnel. So There's a lovely bit there where we talk about how everybody was contributing to the war effort, including the children and stuff like that. Any other questions? Okay, I'll spin you around. We'll walk back down this way and I'll tell you a little bit about how it was constructed.